What's up guys, Andrew here on my channel GearedInc, where I get to share what I'm passionate about with you. On my channel, that's PC tech, games, and gear. Today I'm talking about something that I don't think is touched on a lot, the downgrade. We're always talking about upgrading our systems, better GPUs, better CPUs, but what if you are kind of scaling back? Now, I didn't do this on purpose. Going from a GTX 1080 to a 1050 Ti was not something I decided to do. My 1080 bricked. I don't know if you guys know, but I bought the GTX 1080 like the first day it released. I was lucky enough to get one, but the VRMs had a huge heating problem, which their solution to that was just better thermal heating pads, which really did nothing. I had a hybrid cooler on mine, and over time, the VRMs have basically degraded to the point where I was getting insane heat under any, idle or load or whatever. So I sent it in RMA, and thank goodness EVGA's actually has a really good RMA process, at least every time I've had to use them. So I've got my replacement on the way, should be here any day. In the meantime, I wanted to share my experience over the last 2 weeks of doing this downgrade and really praise the 1050 Ti and just kind of gaming in general, as far as you don't need as much as you think you do to have a good experience. That's been my takeaway from this. Now, to be fair, it is paired with my 1700X, which is a very powerful CPU, but the argument can also be made that Intel has better IPC, so at 1080p it's gonna perform better either way. So taking that kind of out of the equation, let's just talk about the games and kind of what my overall experience has been. One of the funny things about this is what stood out to me is a lot of the games I play are not that graphically demanding. For example, I play a lot of Overwatch right now, and that hasn't, I haven't skipped a beat in terms of going to 1080p. Arc, which obviously that's a game where you're not really, you really wouldn't expect it to perform as well as it does. It absolutely does. I've been playing a lot of Battlefield 1 and yes, Battlefront 2. I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, and I hate EA to my core, especially for the, try to pull with pay to play and all that stuff, but I still like the game in general. And then other things I've been playing a lot of lately are things like League of Legends, Path of Exile, all these games that are well optimized. And honestly, I was getting 60 FPS plus in all those titles at high settings. In some games I was getting as much as 100 plus, even like an Overwatch and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where I think we forget as we get better systems, as you become more of an enthusiast, as you have a little bit more money to buy your system and get better components, I think we forget that the minimum requirements to have a great gaming experience aren't as high as what the market and even the community maybe says they are. Now, there are exceptions to that. Obviously, games like PUBG, which is probably the worst optimized game in the world, I had to drop down to low settings to have a reasonable experience, or at least something that I would call reasonable. And there were a couple of other titles like Witcher 3, Total Warhammer, where it was playable, but I could definitely notice a difference. I have a 165 Hz IPS G-Sync panel that's 1440p. So normally I play at 1440p with my 1080, which again, it's one of those things where in terms of dropping refresh, you definitely notice. But overall, guys, the point of this video is that over the last 2 weeks, I've been reminded that if you want a game, don't fall into the false hype that you have to have the best end system to have a great experience, because honestly, I haven't skipped a beat over the last 2 weeks with using my wife's 1050 Ti. And if you're building a new system, or if you have to make a decision between getting something reasonable and upgrading later, spend your money, on something that or spend less money, I would say, and get something that's a little more reasonable, as far as just you're not gonna skip a beat with your experience. So outside of that, guys, I'm gonna have a couple of videos coming up that have been requested. One of them is I wanna do a test on the difference between 1080p high ultra settings versus 4K at medium to low. The reason for that is we're in a weird space where console gaming is finally have a 4K option. It's not awesome, obviously, but I'm curious to see that if we were to compare like 1080p ultra versus 4K medium low, if the resolution makes the biggest difference versus the settings. So I'm going to be having a video on that. Also, by request, I'm going to have a follow-up to my my Ryzen 3 streaming video. A lot of people pointed out that when I was doing that with Shadowplay, I had it with my 1080, and they want to see if it's comparable with the 1050 Ti. We've also had BIOS updates and things that might better optimize for OBS, so I'm going to be doing a new video on that as well. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, leave me a big thumbs up. If not, go ahead and leave me a thumbs down. Get subscribed either way. I want to hear back. Even if you don't agree with me, I'm always happy to have a conversation. And even if you don't watch my videos, I'm going to keep making them anyway, because I love to do it. We hope to see you next time here at GearedInc.